I think that.
Ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would.
So in this video we're looking at the carbs. These carbs were sitting in a box for God knows how long, and you can see they're totally dirty on the inside.
You dirty bitch!
So before we can do that, we have to fix this, which is the float post. Seems to be broken off, and I think this is a common issue because I've seen it on other carbs when I've googled them. And you can see here, I just zoomed in so you get a better understanding. So most of it's there, we just have to fix the top part. I'm using a 2-part epoxy to do this, which is resistant to petrol. So what we want to do is we want to sand and file down this just so it
A few inches later
fits a little bit better. So this isn't my idea, I got it from Brick House Builds, and he did it on one of his videos, so I just copied it and hope it works for me. So I'm just mixing these two together, making sure they're even in that grey tone, and then I'm just putting it on, making sure just to get it on the post and nothing else. We're going to leave that to dry overnight. Meantime, I'm taking all the other carb parts and just putting them in the Ultrasonic just to clean them.
Yeah, boy.
Super clean and shiny, of course, which is always a good thing. And this is after I've built up the layers of epoxy, so I'm just sanding, making sure that it fits properly and it isn't going to interfere with the float. I've also drilled a small hole for the pin just to go inside. As you can see, just fitting the pin in, clicks in perfectly, which is nice, and it allows the float to go up and down, which is what we want. So I'm taking all the other cards out of the box and all the parts that I have, as well as some rebuild kits that I got off eBay, which I had to order another set because these weren't the complete set. And taking all the diaphragms and floats and springs and all that I had. Now these these were all worn out, so I just replaced these with fresh new ones. And see, as you can see, they're just kind of a bit worn there, so I just want to replace them. So just doing a little bit of cleaning first. So I take a bit of WD-40 and Scotch Brite and just rub this part down. This is the bracket to hold all the cards together, so I just want to make it a little bit cleaner, get rid of all that 40-year-old dirt. Then I'm taking a Scotch Brite attachment for the Dremel and just going over the carb. This doesn't have to be done, I just wanted to make them look a little bit cleaner because they had got a bit of oxidation all over them. And I'm just checking to make sure that all the parts are flowing easily, because the springs is super important. We want the butterflies to snap back. So you can see here, this one's super crusty and not allowing me to flick back.
Springing back.
As my past self also explains. So a little bit of WD-40. And just going back and forth, making sure the oil gets into it, taking away all that crust. And you can see here, it's now taking a little bit of effort just to make that flick back, which is what we want. So this is nice and smooth now. I'm starting to rebuild the carbs now. So just taking some of the varnish off these needles. And I'm starting to put the diaphragms in between these two plastic pieces, making sure they stick properly. Later on you can see one of the carbs I actually didn't get it to seat properly, and it wouldn't go up and down. Just putting the jets.
Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
So I couldn't get this jet out, and every time I used a screwdriver, I was just mangling up. So I decided to add a little bit of heat to it and a little bit of oil, but that still couldn't get it out. As you can see here, I'm going to stick the screwdriver in, and it's not going to do anything for me because it was just completely stuck in there. I just couldn't get a good grip on it. I didn't want to force it too much just in case I wouldn't get it out. So what I decided to do was just get a extractor. So first I have to drill it out, making sure not to go too far and actually go into the carb. I'm just waiting till I see a little bit of brass chips, and then I know I'm in deep enough. You can see them there, just dropping on the table. So I start to use the screw extractor. So I'm just making sure, and just that little bit of feel, I could feel that I had already bit into the brass, so I could loosen it out. Now, why I was doing this was I believed I had the correct jets to go into this, which later I found out I didn't. And you can see I'm just slowly pulling it out.
Well, I think I just fucked up.
So that was me panicking that the jets didn't work. So I went on to the parts store just to check if I could get them. And this is where I found out the one downside of owning vintage motorcycles is that parts are very, very hard to get sometimes. Which made me panic because I felt that I had ruined the project so far. So you can see I'm just scrolling down until I find the right part, which I believe was like 64. And you can see they don't have any stock.
What the fuck?
But I was able to find some on eBay of new stock, or new old stock from France. So this is me fitting in the new rebuild kit. So now the float assembly is now working and it's being replaced. Just swapping over the little filters to the new ones. The previous rebuild kit I had was kind of a press fit, not a screw fix, but these carbs needed a screw. And I'm also checking to see if these float, because it's a bit of damage. I just want to see was there any pinholes, and you can see it's floating in the oil okay, so that's good. If it's sunk, then it will be a hole in it. So just putting on the new gaskets for the float bowl. And this took a little bit of time on this car because this is the one we kind of fixed with that epoxy. So it's not that uniform on the other side, so I just had to kind of press it a little bit more. And I also want to replace the screws to stainless steel just so they wouldn't get stuck again or rust. Sometimes when they rust, they get stuck in the treads and it's a really pain to get them out. So here's a trick I learned before. Just use a little bit of grease just to kind of seat the seal on so it doesn't move. Vaseline can work as well. I'm just pressing that in. Off camera I polished these top caps for the carbs. That's why they're looking shiny. Just testing that the diaphragms are actually working and pushing the needle down. So that, oh, it's working perfect. So I'm going to work on the second carb now. This one should be faster because it's not the one we added the epoxy to. Again, just repeating the steps as before. Take the float. Housing, just screw it back in. Take the jet. The gasket then for the float bowl has to go on. So yeah, I got a little bit confused here. I was using an old gasket, so this is the brand new one. Making sure it wasn't blocking any of the holes, important ones. Putting the float in, checking that they go up and down. Now I can just assemble everything. Just putting in the few mixer screws here, so I got new ones just in case the old ones were damaged, because it doesn't take much to damage those. People over tighten them and they crush the bottom of it. So I'm just using the grease technique from before, making sure that's nice and flat. Now this was one of the carbs that didn't seat properly when I was rebuilding the diaphragm, and you can see later, I think in the next few shots, what happens when they don't seat properly. They don't have a good vacuum. That noise is the diaphragm not actually holding vacuum anymore, so I took that apart off camera. And here I'm just replacing the T fittings for the fuel lines. So these get cracked over time, so it's good to replace these with the brass ones, which has O-rings that we can replace if they get worn out. And I'm just checking the manual just to make sure I'm doing everything correctly. So the way these carbs work are in banks of 2. So the first 2 and then 3 and 4 are together. And they're connected with the T fittings for the fuel and a T fitting for the air as well. And I'm just putting on the bracket that holds everything together. So I'm just making sure they're all aligned, and this will keep the bottoms of the carbs from moving. And then I'm working on the second bank. Same thing as before, just make sure the T fittings fit in, make sure the air T lines fit in as well, and just make sure that the little throttle connectors also fit together. Now I made a mistake here. I actually put a T fitting from a fuel line in where the air should be, and there is a difference. One is larger than the other. The fuel line is larger than the air. Off camera I noticed this, so I put it back together. So I'm just double checking everything's aligned, everything will fit together. I'm also just loosening the screw where the 2 carbs connect together. I just tighten these by hand first and then hit them with a tool because I just won't cross threading anymore. And on the top here we have brackets as well. So the center bracket is used as well as a holder for the throttle cable. You can just see it there up at the top, that's where the throttle cable will go in. And the outside pieces as well. They're slightly different, they don't have any brackets for any cables, they're just there just to hold the carbs together so they don't flex and let the fuel out or let the air vacuum happen. And this outside piece is slightly different as it has a tie down or like a screw mount for something. I'm not too sure what it's actually for. I was looking at the instructions and looking on eBay and looking at photos of the carbs, and I could not figure out what that was for. So I had a little bit of debating on which orientation it should be. And earlier I hinted that I had made a mistake and put a fuel line T fitting in where it should be the air one. So this is slightly pushing out the carbs due to that. So off camera I fixed that issue. And here I'm just eyeballing the butterfly valves, making sure they all open together. This is what you would use a vacuum gauge for when the bike's running, but I'm just kind of getting it set here on the bench. And you can see the last cylinder, number 4, slightly hesitated. It's out of line, so I'm just tightening the screw down, which should put it closer to the other ones. Now, this isn't exact, so when the bike's running, I'm going to do this again. Just adjusting and checking over and over again. So I'm happy with that. I'm just going to put it back down. I'm going to start working on the choke assembly. So we have all these little forks and ball bearings and a rod to put together. So I'm taking this little poker that I have and I'm just rubbing it against this magnetic screwdriver just so I can get the ball bearings to stick on it, because I can't fit anything else in. You can just see it. And this is what kind of latches on to the spring, so when the choke is out, ball bearing is pushed up and it keeps it out. And there's only 2 ball bearings, so there's one at the front and one at the back. And I lost the original ones when taking the carbs apart. So you push the fork or the rod in through the forks of each one of these, and these actuate a little plunger that starts the choke assembly. Now, again, off camera, I noticed a mistake. So these forks are actually pointing the wrong way. So on these forks you have a little grub screw that tightens down onto the rod, and these were inaccessible the way I had put them, so off camera I just turned them around to the right correct position. So I'm using a heat gun just to heat these boots up, just to stop them from cracking, making them more pliable. So these are new boots as well, so there shouldn't be any cracks, but I just don't want to introduce anything new to them either. So this was a bit of a workout. Yeah, so I had to use a hammer and a little bit of brute force to get these done. Now, in my rush to get this project done, I put the fuel lines on, but I didn't put any barbs on. And you'll see later on this comes to bite me. But I remember that I have to fit these jets in, so these were the ones that I used to drill on. So they came from France, so they're new old stock. So they're as rare as hen's teeth. So they're all tight, and I start putting fuel in, and this is what I was talking about, the barbs, so it started leaking out, but I fixed this off camera. So thanks for watching, and I'll give you a sneak peek of the next video in the next shot.
Because they knew you had to.
Yeah.
Maybe take some back.
Yeah.
What's the 1000cc?
1100.
Actually, it's not that big a bike.
No.
No.
I still.
I'm waiting on a part to come.
That's my favorite bike.
I just love the day you got that, the look of it and everything. Like.
Oh, she's
So
so fucking close to starting.
Yeah.
It's annoying.
Darn, did you get it all on GoPro? Fuck this and
Yes,
fuck
yeah.
that. And